Somewhere Better by I_am_Ellie on AO3. Episode 43. Chapter 4. Only You. Izuku's grin hadn't wavered once they had walked towards the gate of UA. If anything, it seemed to only get wider, if that was all physically possible. His eyes were shining brightly as he, Shouta and Hizashi, walked through the main entrance, the security gate, not crashing down because Nezu had long since programmed Izuku into the system. Shouta guided Izuku to the front office, while Hizashi ran off to help the English teacher set up the classroom for the day. Izuku had seemed a bit upset by this, having wanting to explore the building and see the classrooms for himself, but his uncles assured him that he would be able to see the rest of the building at some point during the day. Shouta began his workday, organizing papers and listening to messages left on the phone overnight, sorting through messages for Nezu to listen to later based on urgency. Izuku sat in the corner with a few of his action figures, a couple children books, and an apple. He wasn't sulking slightly as he sat there, rolling the apple back and forth on the carpet floor, but the child's discouragement couldn't be helped. After an hour into the day, a crowd of students started rushing into the building, and Shouta set a basket on the desk for absent notes. Izuku's disappointment seemed to dim slightly as he watched the older children walk into the office, a girl with a scarf wrapped tightly around her head, which Shouta knew hid dozens of small snakes, a boy with bright red skin, who Shouta guessed had some sort of heat quirk, another girl, this one who left brightly colored crystals wherever she stepped that melted away a few minutes later. By the time the morning rush had ceased and everyone was in their classrooms, Izuku was bouncing up and down in place excitedly, looking like he was seconds away from making a break for it out of the classroom and investigating the school. The child had always been fascinated by heroes and UA and other people's quirks. The child had made them sit through the UA Sports Festival when it had aired on TV the year before, despite the fact that it had been rather dull that year, and Hizashi and Shouta never really watched it. Shouta expected the child was trying to make up for the lack of his own quirk by learning all he could about the quirks of others, and the thought worried him a bit. It wasn't anything particularly unhealthy, and if anything, it was educational, so he saw no reason to discourage the practice. And he liked reading Izuku's hero notebooks and looking at his drawings. When he showed them to him, they were both amusing and mind-blowingly detailed, considering the child's age. "Anki Sho," hastened child. Shouta admonished, typing something into the computer. Hizashi always teased him when he saw him on the computer, something about him pecking the keys. At least now, with Shouta being on the computer so much for work, he'd been much better at typing. "I have to finish my work before we could go anywhere." Izuku slumped back against the wall, nudging one of his comics books with the tip of his sneakers, grumbling and murmuring, arms crossed in front of his chest and pouting. "You can still explore this room, Cabbage," Shouta pointed out evenly, hoping the boy would take the offer because he was quite distracting and it was making Shota's job a bit difficult than it ought to be. "Just don't break anything." Izuku's face brightened, and he scurried off towards the back of the room, peeking into the doors and looking through the cabinets. Nothing could possibly go wrong if the boy was just busying himself in the front room, right? Izuku loved UA, even if he hadn't seen much yet. The school building was so big. There weren't any playgrounds, not that Izuku could see, but there were training areas on the far edge of the campus, and fountains and trees and so much space. Ankisho had given Izuku permission to explore the office, and Izuku wasn't going to pass an offer like that. Even if there might not be lots of stuff to see in the little front office, it was still a part of UA, so there had to be something. There were 3 different doors around the front office, and Izuku peeked into each one, because Ankisho said that he could explore, and wouldn't get into that much trouble. Probably. The first door was the supply cabinet, with lots of highlighters and pencils and a few first aid kits. Lots and lots of erasers. It looked like UA was overstocked in erasers and understocked in everything else. Anki Sho had said the word eraser in his hero name, because his quirk, Eraserhead, Izuku imagined his Anki Sho with a giant eraser replacing his head, his capture weapon wrapped around it, and he had to suppress a giggle. The next door led off into a room with a giant printer situated right in the corner of the space. It was printing out papers, pages of what appeared to be exams for a test, and all the big words and long letters of a paper made Izuku's head hurt. He left the room quickly, since it was fairly self-explanatory and there didn't seem to be anything more in it than a large hunk of plastic in the center of the room and the table beneath it. The next door was different from the others. This one was made of dark wood and had a shiny golden knob that seemed to be polished to a gleam. It was like the stereotypical door of a villain in all the cartoons Izuku watched with Hizashi, and it made Izuku feel a bit nervous at the prospect of seeing what was inside. There was light leaking out from underneath the door, orange and much more welcoming than the door itself, and Izuku decided to knock on the door quietly before twisting the knob and pushing it open. For a moment, he wasn't sure what he was looking at. It appeared to be a regular, empty office, a desk in the same dark wood as the door, with no extravagant designs or engravings on it. A red cloth rolly chair, a sleek, black, new-looking computer rested on the desk. A bloody red carpet sat on the floor. All of this was offset compared to the Stanley-painted beige walls. There were framed photos on the walls, though they seemed to be filled with the same picture that had come with the frame at the store. 3 chairs sat against the far wall. The 2 chairs sat directly in front of the desk. It was all very official and intimidating, and Izuku wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Izuku had previously believed that the chairs behind the desk were empty. That, it turned out, was not the case. Izuku could just barely see 2 white, fuzzy ears peeking up from one side of the desk. For a moment, Izuku thought it was a cat, and was delighted, but the ears were too round to be a cat's, and a cat would never be tall enough to see over the desk. Maybe someone's pet had escaped and made its way into the office? Izuku walked around the desk, intent on seeing whatever creature rested there, and realization hit him a second before he saw who was sitting at the desk. Nezu, the principal of UA. Anki Sho worked as his secretary. The rolly chair slowly turned in place. The odd-looking creature, dog, rat, small polar bear, smiling at him eerily. "Can I help you, little one?" Nezu asked, and Izuku blinked. You're Nezu," Izuku stammered, feeling odd, and, if he was being honest, a bit frightened. You're the principal of UA. You're awesome!" Nezu continued smiling, the same eerie smile. "Awesome, you say? Well, I'm flattered," Nezu said pleasantly. "It's nice to have a visitor in my office for once. Would you like some tea, little one?" Izuku didn't really like tea that much. He liked juice, or water, or milk, but he nodded anyways. Nezu busied himself with making a cup. "I assume you're Aizawa's child," Nezu said, handing Izuku the teacup. "I can't think of any other reason a child as young as you would be in this school." Izuku nodded, taking a sip of tea. It was sweet, like honey, and Izuku liked it. "He's my unkie," Izuku exclaimed, taking another sip of tea. "He started working here a while ago. My other unkie, too." Yes, I see," Nezu said, sipping from his own cup. "Would you like a pastry, little one?" Izuku nodded, and Nezu quickly passed him a chocolate biscuit. Izuku had no idea where the biscuit had come from. "Your unkies are good workers, very diligent." Izuku opened his mouth to ask a question, realized that his mouth was full of biscuit, and quickly swallowed it. "What's diligent mean?" he asked. Diligent. Adjective. Having or showing care and consideration in one's work or duties. Nezu said swiftly, taking another sip of the drink. Izuku thought the man sounded rather like a dictionary. Izuku still didn't quite understand, since Nezu had so used rather large words, but decided he would ask Anki Sho about it later. He always explained things in a way he could understand. "My unkies are really good workers," Izuku agreed. "They work super hard, and Anki Sho is a great teacher, even if he isn't a teacher. And Hizashi is a good teacher too. I can tell because he's great at explaining things, especially if you're confused, and he's awesome at English. You find many things awesome, little one, Nezu observed, and Izuku nodded. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, you're here because your primary school staffing meeting. Yes, Mr. Nezu, Izuku said. Angisho said I could come to work with him since we don't have a babysitter or anything like that. Well, Nezu said, the same pleasant, eerie smile on his face. You're always welcome here, little one. I'm gonna go to school here someday, Izuku said excitedly, leaning forward. My friends want to come too. We're gonna be a hero team, even though we don't really got great quirks for it. Nezu looked interested now. Tell me about your friend's quirks, he requested, pulling a notepad and pen, seemingly out of nowhere. May can see really far away and she wants to go into hero support, Izuku answered, grinning. She's really smart and really good at math, even better than Ochako, and I don't even think that was possible. Ochako is younger than me, and she could do multiplication and division. Impressive, Nezu said, scribbling away at his notepad. Tell me more. Ochako can make things float, like they have zero gravity. She can make them weightless by touching them, but using it makes her tummy hurt really bad, like when you're in a car for too long, and all the moving makes your belly feel all sour and squashy. Yeah, I also got a friend named Hitoshi. I love Hitoshi. I think Hitoshi and Ochako are my bestest friends. Hitoshi doesn't talk, Izuku continued, a little sad and subdued now. He's really scared of his quirk, I think. I don't really understand what it is. He doesn't talk about it a lot, only that a lot of people think it's evil. But I don't think it's evil. I think it's activated by talking, and that's why he doesn't like to talk. Nezu nodded, scribbling that down, and Izuku continued. My last friend is Denki, Izuku said, brightening up a bit. He's one of my newer friends, and he's really nice, but he's closer with Mei and Toshi than he is with me and Ocha. He can shoot electricity from his body, but it makes him a little dumb sometimes if he uses it too much, and he calls himself dumb a lot because of it. I think that's silly, because he makes bad grades a lot, but he doesn't seem dumb, and he's really, really nice, so I don't think it matters that much if he is dumb. But he still doesn't like it. He's kind of silly like that, but he really likes reading, even if he's kind of slow at it. And he likes this book called Catcher in the Rye, and he likes this guy named Hermione, and Denki lived in Maine before he moved to Japan. Nezu had already gone through several pages in the small, handheld notepad, and he was still writing furiously. He stopped abruptly, setting the notepad and pen down on the table calmly before looking back at Izuku and smiling once more. It sounds like you have good friends, little one, Nezu informed him. Izuku nodded, smiling softly. Yeah, I think so too. I didn't have lots of friends before them, other than Kachan, and he wasn't very nice, even if he was my best friend. So I really like the friends I have now. I'm sure, Nezu said. Well, I can assure you of this, the rat-like man said, trailing off haughtily. Even if you are quirkless, and yes, I do know you're quirkless, I have no doubt you'll become an excellent hero one day. And, if not that, a fine young man regardless. Izuku grinned at the principal, noting the slight burning in his eyes. He thought he liked Nezu. How did you like UA, Izu? Hizashi asked as they walked out the building and out towards their cars. Izuku was holding Hizashi's hand and had a happy, albeit distracted look on his face. I had a great time, Izuku informed them. I even made a new friend. Who? Shouta asked, taking a sip of his thermos of a coffee. Mr. Nezu, Izuku exclaimed, and Shouta promptly choked and spat on his coffee. To the side, Shouta noticed that his friend and fiancé were in similar predicaments. Nezu. Friends with Nezu. Only his nephew could pull something like that off and still be left standing to tell the tale. Only you, Izuku. Only you. Alright, so we got a little bit of interaction between Nezu and Izuku, and we saw Izuku taking some notes, so I've always wondered about the notes, but I always like this moment because like somehow Nezu just knew Izuku was quirkless, and he's like, you know, even though you're quirkless, and yes, I know you're quirkless, you will still be a fine hero, and if not, a fine young man. I love that. I feel like Nezu has been keeping an eye on, and is like, huh, this young man, I sense something in him. He's gonna be a smart one. I like him. And of course, Izuku befriending Nezu. I love that. I always love crack fanfictions where Izuku's like, oh yeah, I made friends with Nezu. And everybody's like, you what? And everyone's like, okay, well, great. World domination's gonna happen. We're doomed. We're doomed. It's gonna happen. We're all gonna die. It was nice knowing you all. You know, I love that whole premise. Is it very canonical? Probably not. Is it hilarious as fuck? Yes, it is. It is fucking hilarious, and I love it. I live it. I live, breathe, and consume it. You know, I love it so much. But there's not much of a psychology corner or anything I want to talk about. We all love Nezu, so I don't know, put rats in my comment section. Just a bunch of different rats. Or talk about your favorite Nezu moment in whether canon or fanfiction. A Nezu moment that you absolutely adored. I think one of my favorite Nezu moments that I absolutely adored is a moment in this one fanfiction where Nezu befriends Izuku. Izuku is a 12-year-old vigilante, and Nezu's like, all right, have fun, vigilante name. I forgot the vigilante's name, but have fun, vigilante Izuku, and fun at your school tomorrow, Izuku. And then calls him by his name, and Izuku's like, hold up, how the fuck did you figure it out? And Nezu's like, I just did. I be expecting your letter to be able to apply to our recommendation exam. Have fun. Bye. And it is the absolutely most hilarious moment because even us, the audience, never fucking found out how the fuck he found out. Literally a chapter beforehand, Nezu was having a hard time figuring out the identity of Vigilante Izuku, and then a moment later, Nezu knew. Nezu fucking, what the fuck is he, a god? Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.